Now, the latest from ITV News Meridian with Sangeeta Barbara and Fred Dinage.
Good evening and welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines here in the south. The hidden cost of getting to work. Are the south's commuters being taken for more than a ride?
Lean but mean. A slimmed down fire service promises its frontline cover will be maintained.
Lucky to escape, how 3 people suffered only cuts and bruises when their plane crashed and overturned.
And in full bloom, a snowy carpet brightens up the countryside. Will we get the real thing though? Simon will tell us. Good evening. Long-suffering commuters from the south have resigned themselves to forking out thousands of pounds for their annual season tickets, but it doesn't end there.
Indeed, those who have to drive to a station also face a yearly bill of hundreds of pounds to park their cars. And new figures reveal passengers from the south are paying more than anywhere else in the country.
For example, if you're commuting from Southampton Parkway to London, it'll cost you £1,400 on top of your annual travelling costs of almost £5,500.
Well, parking is even dearer at Reading, where in addition to more than £4,200 for a season ticket, you'll also have to pay £1,850 to park your car.
And from Basingstoke, it's £4,000 plus for a season ticket, £1,200 for parking.
Passengers say it's nothing short of a rip-off, but rail bosses say while it sounds expensive, it is in fact good value. Our transport correspondent Mike Pearce has been talking to both sides.
Not only do we pay the most expensive rail fares in Europe, but now comes news charges to park at stations are also some of the most expensive. Topping the list is Reading, closely followed by Guildford.
I do it every day and it's ridiculous.
How much does it cost you?
Normally about £18.
Just very expensive. Yeah, completely expensive.
The only reason I do it is because marginally it's more convenient for me to have my car here. But I could actually be chauffeur driven into the station every morning.
And it'd be cheaper?
And it'd be cheaper, yeah.
Less than half are happy with the facilities. What trade companies should be doing is investing this money back into improving the car parking facilities. More spaces, better lighting, better security.
Basingstoke costs £8.50 a day. South West Trains say charges are not going up this year, and millions is being invested to improve security and provide extra spaces.
Well, the annual season ticket of £1,850 works out at around £7 a day. But what really annoys people here is the daily charge, £24 for 24 hours. But how does that compare to other car parks in the town?
Well, this car park is just the other side of the station and is slightly cheaper at £22 for 24 hours. And if you're prepared to walk just a little bit further to the shopping centre, it's a little bit cheaper, just £20 for 24 hours. It confirms that Reading Station is not only the most expensive station car park in the country, but the most expensive in the town.
If you look at how much it actually costs during the day, it's actually relatively reasonable if you work it out across a whole year. And it's also worth remembering that any money that's generated from this car park goes straight back into the railway to build stations like the one we're standing in right now.
What do you say to passengers who say it is a rip-off and it's just too much?
Well, I'd say that there are plenty of other facilities for people who don't want to pay that amount to park in this car park. The new development here at Reading in particular has much improved bus and taxi access, so there are all sorts of options for people. We're not demanding that they pay this. This is just the cost of that particular car park.
Many feel it's unjustified. Mike Pearce, ITV News, Reading Station.
In other news, the jury in the trial of a man accused of murdering a Hampshire grandmother has been hearing from a forensic scientist about the DNA evidence being used in the case. Georgina Edmonds, aged 77, was found at her home in Brambridge near Winchester in January 2008. Now, the prosecution says a DNA sample found on her blouse is 26 million times more likely to have come from Matthew Hamlin than someone unrelated to him. The defence witness said he examined the item and found an extra cut in the sample's tapings which wasn't accounted for. 37-year-old Matthew Hamlin from Bishopstoke denies murder.
A third person being questioned after the death of a man on the Isle of Wight has been released on bail. Police were called to St James Street in Newport in the early hours of Sunday, where they found a man with serious head injuries. He was named as 49-year-old Gary Stacey. 3 men in their 20s and all from Newport were arrested. 2 were released yesterday.
3 people escaped serious injury when their light aircraft crashed and overturned while landing at Bembridge Airfield on the Isle of Wight. They were treated for shock, cuts and bruises.
Cuts in government funding and a national shortage of prison personnel has made life difficult for staff and prisoners at the Ford Open Prison in Sussex. That's according to an annual report. The Independent Monitoring Board, which looks into the running of the prison, also claims that so-called legal highs continue to be a problem.
A leaner but meaner service to meet modern demands. Well, that's the promise of Hampshire Fire and Rescue Service as it struggles to cut costs while maintaining its frontline services.
Details released today confirmed round-the-clock cover will be maintained, but 200 jobs will go. Sam Holder has the full story.
Saving lives and saving costs. This new equipment pierces a hole through walls and doors, cooling down flames before firefighters even enter. Part of Hampshire Fire Service's plan to save millions, using new technology to cut down on staff. More than 200 frontline jobs are planned to go, all voluntary redundancies. That's 1 in 6 firefighters in Hampshire. But no fire stations will close and all will have some 24/7 cover. It's part of £4 million of savings.
We now know that there's different ways of tackling fires and providing a fire service, and even if there were no financial pressures upon us, I would be proposing these technical and technology changes because the residents of Hampshire deserve the best fire and rescue service.
Also part of the service's final budget proposal, reducing the number of fire engines. So this is a traditional full-size fire engine and it takes about 4 firefighters to operate it. So what the service are proposing to do is replace some of these with smaller first response vehicles that are about half the size and can be operated by just 2 firefighters if necessary. The less powerful first response vehicles can tackle most property fires, but could struggle with large commercial blazes. The Fire Authority will decide on these proposals next week. But the changes might not be the last. Hampshire Fire and Rescue needs to cut a further £12 million by 2020. Sam Holder, ITV News, Eastleigh.
Now, spring is just around the corner and lambing season is already well underway. But sadly, that means many will fall victim to dogs allowed to run out of control.
Yes, farmers say at least 100 have been killed so far this year. But to try to limit the carnage, signs are being put up at fields where sheep are grazing to make dog owners more aware. This from Richard Jones.
More than 100 reported deaths. There have also been injuries, all caused by dogs, most of them being taken for a walk by their owners. Farmer Andy Jackman has suffered 20 attacks in his years raising sheep on the Surrey Downs. In the worst, 11 were killed.
A field isn't a playground. If there's a footpath, which there is through this field, it's a means of getting from A to B. Nothing more. Generally speaking, most people aren't the problem. It's the same old story. It's the minority that cause the problem.
Last year, Tarina Plowright started courses to train dogs not to attack sheep. Now she admits that in most cases, that's not possible.
People take their dogs for a walk and they genuinely believe that their dog will not chase sheep. And I know that about 98% of dogs will chase sheep. I train dogs. I know what happens.
Now she's launching National Sheep Watch to tackle the problem. One of its aims is to put signs up at the entrance to fields where sheep are grazing. Owners can be prosecuted and their pets can be destroyed. Richard Jones, ITV News.
More news now from around our region, and the museum at Seaford in Sussex is to undergo an extensive makeover. The project includes work to make the historic building accessible to people with limited mobility. The Martello Tower will get a new footbridge and a lift. Fundraising has been completed thanks to a grant from the National Lottery.
Well, it means that people who haven't been able to get in here will be able to. Now, we have our own volunteers, and some of them now can't manage the stairs, which are very steep. It means that we'll be able to open up the place to groups of older people.
You're watching ITV News here in the Meridian region. Coming up.
Fuel for thought. Are motorists reaping the full benefit of falling petrol prices, or are they being ripped off? We have a special report.
And for more on all of our stories, why not head to our website itv.com/Meridian. Any views or news, you can call us on 0808 1010 095 or get in touch via Facebook or Twitter.
Now, a man who filmed himself confronting a phone thief in Surrey will tonight feature in a programme about crimes caught on camera. The UK is one of the most watched places in the world. It's thought there are more than 4 million CCTV cameras in operation.
And with the rise in smartphones and cameras on cars and bikes, and ones even worn on the body, there's plenty of footage to view. With more, here's Emma Wilkinson.
Millions of us record videos on our phone. Some are more remarkable than others. When former teacher Matt was on a train home to Guildford, he saw a man rifling through a handbag left behind by a fellow passenger, so he hit the record button.
I'm going to take a photo of you nicking someone else's phone. Are you serious? What's your name, mate? Why would you take someone's property? Tell me.
He got upset that I was being rude to him, as if he was somehow entitled to do this, and I was completely out of order to interrupt him going about his phone stealing business.
It's someone else's phone. Put it back.
But he didn't put it back.
Excuse me. Hey, guard! He's stealing someone's phone!
Matt puts his video online and the man was tracked down. He was given a police caution with the condition that he pay the owner of the phone £499 and write her a letter of apology. Around the UK, many police officers are now accompanied on the beat by a body-worn video camera.
They're a great tool. You can't put enough detail in the statement for what the cameras capture.
When PC Alex Prentice and his colleague were called to a domestic incident, they were confronted by a man with an 8-inch knife.
Put it down! Come on! Put it down!
He hits PC Prentice's protective vest with the knife. The officer takes out his baton and manages to get the attacker to the floor.
The offender did sustain some injuries, but unfortunately he shouldn't have been messing about with a big kitchen knife.
The man was jailed for 3.5 years. Camera footage is increasingly being used as evidence in criminal cases. When Louise suspected a neighbour had been stealing from her uncle who had dementia, she set up a hidden camera.
What's all that on your window there? Oh, it's not. There's something shining through.
I felt sick, even though I knew it was happening. To see it, the actual footage itself is so shocking. I just don't know what kind of person could do that to somebody so vulnerable like my uncle.
Lisa Cobain pleaded guilty to theft. She was given a suspended 12-week sentence in order to do 120 hours of unpaid work. In this case, and others like it, a rolling camera helped bring a criminal to justice. Emma Wilkinson, ITV News.
And those stories and many others feature in Heroes and Villains, caught on camera here on ITV at 9.
More news now from around our region. Berkshire-based Vodafone has announced staff redundancies as part of a restructuring programme. 250 employees at the firm's headquarters in Newbury are sadly to lose their jobs. The firm, which employs 4,500 people in the town, says it will work with all those affected. Frontline staff will be unaffected.
A teenager has been charged by police investigating a ticket scam at last year's festival event on the Isle of Wight. Benjamin Highland Ward, who's 18 and from Saltdean in Sussex, faces 9 counts of fraud. He'll appear before magistrates in Brighton next month. More than 900 people have claimed they were left out of pocket and with no tickets after paying to see acts including Duran Duran and Missy Elliott.
Police are appealing for the public's help to find a missing woman from Guildford in Surrey. Michaela Pugh, who's 37 and a Slovakian national, has not been seen since Friday. Officers believe Michaela may have been driving a black Lexus. A car matching that description has been found in East Sussex. Surrey police are now working with officers in Sussex to try and locate Michaela.
It was one of the RSPCA's most disturbing cases of animal abuse, and now more than 500,000 people have signed a petition to stop it happening again. Chunky the Chihuahua was stolen from his home and tortured before being dumped in a bin. 4 teenage boys have been banned from keeping animals for 5 years. A petition is calling for animal abusers to be placed on a special register and banned from having pets for life.
Well, it's fast approaching 16 minutes past 6. Thank you so much for choosing us this evening. And the ITV Evening News continues with the national and the international news at 6:30. To London now for a preview and Mark Austin.
David Cameron's in Brussels to drum up support for his EU reforms. But today came a warning that there's no guarantee that any deal would win the backing of Euro MPs. And Scotland's First Minister tells us that even though she supports staying in, she wouldn't campaign alongside Mr Cameron. Also, could the revolutionary cancer treatment helping this little girl prove a real breakthrough? And the town statue that stood for decades celebrating the wrong man. Join us at 6:30.
Mark, we will. Now, when we talked earlier about car parking costs in stations, but what about petrol costs?
Well, crude oil prices have dropped to under $30 a barrel, but are the tumbling prices being reflected at petrol stations? Campaigners for fairer fuel prices say some retailers aren't making cuts, but petrol station owners say they're struggling to survive.
Well, many independent petrol stations have closed down. Berkshire, Buckinghamshire and West Sussex, according to recent figures, have fewer filling stations per motorist than almost any other part of the country.
But if the garage owners aren't making money from selling fuel, who is? Chris Halpin investigates.
This forecourt may be full of fillers, but some sellers say they're struggling to make petrol pay.
If we want to survive, then we have to be competitive. We make only 3 pence per litre, and sometimes some customers do not want to pay. They will just put some petrol and just drive off.
But in recent months, the wholesale price of oil has taken a tumble, and it's claimed some retailers aren't as focused as others on passing on the discounts to drivers.
It's not being reflected on the forecourts because retailers are quite simply hanging on to their profit margins. You've got diesel, particularly, where the average margin in the UK is 11p a litre. And that's not fair. It's not fair on drivers, and it's not fair on the economy because it's stopping growth.
But the industry denies greasing its own wheels. And the body representing independent retailers thinks with 37% of them closing across the South Coast and Thames Valley since 2005, it proves there's more pressure on profits than ever.
Our retailers are making more gross margin from selling a bottle of water or a cup of coffee than they are 40 litres of fuel. We want government to look after the independent retailers because at the moment there are so many areas where we are losing out.
So just who is making the money? Well, assuming a litre of fuel is £1, we've already heard this petrol station here is making around 3 pence a litre. 7p goes to the oil distributor and wholesaler, and it costs around 15 pence to turn the crude oil into diesel and unleaded. However, 57.95p goes on fuel duty and 16.7 pence on VAT. So that's 3/4 of your pound going straight to the Treasury.
So many have tackled themselves to tackle the high tax, including this MP who sits on the Transport Select Committee. He says 75% tax on fuel is unfair and is calling for a cut.
The Chancellor not only takes the duty, but he also takes VAT on the duty. So we're paying tax on the tax, which is outrageous. So at every level, whether it's the motorist we're being hit or whether it's through the supply chain we're being hit.
The government says it expects fuel companies to pass on savings in the wholesale price of oil and gas to motorists. A spokesperson said, "We cut fuel duty by 1 penny per litre in March 2011 and cancelled all further increases until 2015-16. This is the longest freeze in 2 decades. Well, we'll have to wait until March to see if fuel duty will stay frozen or fall in line with prices. But as motorists enjoy a cheaper fill, retailers warn of market misery and fuel campaigners accuse the industry of oiling its own palm. The question is just who will be left counting the cost. Chris Halpin, ITV News.
And we will have a second report from Chris in tomorrow's programme. Do join in the debate on our Facebook page about petrol prices near you, and of course more tomorrow.
Now, this month sees the start of the Roller Derby British Championships. And if you haven't heard of Roller Derby, it's a sport played mainly by women and is rather like American football, but on roller skates.
Well, teams from across the country will be fighting for promotion this season. With more, here's Melissa Wright.
Getting ready for an evening's training, but for a rather unusual sport. This is roller derby, sometimes described as rugby on wheels. Women across the country are strapping on their skates, getting ready for the British Championships, which start this month. But what exactly is roller derby?
American football on roller skates without the ball.
It's kind of like you're on a roller coaster, you're not sure when there's going to be a dip.
Derby players will tell you that it's a sport like no other. Maximum intensity, huge physicality, all at high speeds and all on wheels. The idea is simple. The fastest player on the team, the jammer, speeds past the opposition to score points. But these are the blockers, and they'll do whatever they can to stop her. You'll have to pass a series of tests to even get on the track to compete. But once you're on it, players say it becomes more than a sport, it's a lifestyle. You'll get your own name, your own number, and possibly even a new persona.
I think it's just changing yourself into the person that you want to be on track. You're not a mom, you're not somebody's work colleague, you're not a wife, you're just this whole other person.
Roller derby is a sport, but I think as a team it is kind of as an extended family.
My husband has a T-shirt saying roller derby stole my wife, and it does feel a bit like that.
As the British Championships begin this month, teams across the country will be fighting for promotion to the sport's top tiers. If they get there, the glory will be greater, but the hits will definitely be harder. Melissa Wright, ITV News.
It's a tough old game.
Yeah.
I love the way they get these tough names.
What's my roller derby name? Come on.
You'd be Smasher.
Smasher.
I'd be Wimp.
No, you would be a wimp. Now, we may have not seen much real snow this winter, but there are plenty of snowdrops popping up all over the south. Some of them more beautiful at Welford Park, an historic country house and estate between Newbury and Hungerford.
Yes, our own Simon has been there for us to find out just a little bit more.
Well, now, I haven't had a chance to count them all, but we reckon there are probably around 2 million snowdrops here at Welford Park, just outside Newbury. And despite the fact we had a very mild winter, actually they're sort of about on time, aren't they, Deborah?
Yes, I think they are. They're looking absolutely magnificent. They did come a week early, which was extraordinary, but with the damp, warm weather that we've had, but it's now freezing cold, and that's what they love. That will sustain them.
Fridge action will keep them going as long as they should.
Just what they need.
And
yes.
We mentioned how many there are. Lots of different varieties here, aren't there?
There are lots of different varieties of snowdrop, of Galanthus. This is Nivalis, the woodland one, of which there are many varieties, and there will be in the woods here. But all these different cultivars, which are much rarer, we've got a few in the formal gardens, but there are other gardens that have many more.
Don't tell us where they are, or we'll be coming and nabbing them, and that's not allowed.
No, that's not allowed.
But I mean, these have been here for probably around 1,000 years, haven't they?
I think they have. I think they came with the Norman monks. This was a Norman monastery, who were the apothecaries of their time, and they used snowdrop, Galanthus. They harvested galantamine, and that was used for malartet. Galantamine is now used for Alzheimer's.
So fantastic that as well as looking great, they are working for us as well.
Breathe deeply and enjoy. Breathe deeply.
Now you say breathe deeply, they smell as well, don't they?
They smell of honey.
Yeah, but only if the sun is right.
Only if the sun, and a little warmer than it is this afternoon.
Well, sadly can't do anything about the sun or the warmth. Well, not for now, but it's all going to change. Here's the forecast.
That's us driving on, us driving off in France, and us outside a chateau.
Driving to Europe. Eurotunnel Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
Well, now I might be surrounded by signs of spring, but winter isn't quite done with us yet, and it's all to do with this band of rain out to the west. That's going to creep towards us during the night and spread across the region through tomorrow. Now, it looks like through daylight hours it will be rain, but come the evening and it gets colder, that's when it could turn a bit more wintry. Some sleet, maybe even some snow over the higher ground. So a Met Office weather warning that we could see well a dusting over perhaps the Cotswolds, the Chilterns, also Salisbury Plain and the Downs. But Met Office is keeping a close eye on things. We'll know more tomorrow. Back to tonight though, it's a quiet start to the night, some clear spells. Temperatures taking a bit of a tumble, a bit of early frost, but then through the night from the west we'll see the clouds start to increase. Temperatures creeping up as we head towards dawn tomorrow, so we should be above freezing, but it will be a bit dull, and then we'll see that rain arrive and it will be a fairly damp old day, and unfortunately not a warm one either. Temperatures, if we're lucky, up to around 4 or 5, and then like I say, it's tomorrow evening that things could turn a bit more tricky. As for your high tide times, well, you can see in Brighton 10 to 6 in the morning, 7 o'clock in the evening.
Eurotunnel Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
In just a moment, the ITV Evening News with Mark Austin and Mary Nightingale.
Juliet Fletcher's got our news. Do join her if you can. But for now, from the team here at ITV Meridian, thank you very much indeed for watching. Take good care of yourselves and see you again. Same time, same place tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Hello, Wimpy.